the item number 11 on the request to ban the public sale of fireworks, and governing body members will be aware that we had a resolution a year ago. We wanted to go out and consult with the public. We have now consulted with the public, and their feedback is what under this paper we would now pass on to government. It's not council that determines whether there are private sales of fireworks, it's central government. But this council is absolutely entitled to pass on to central government the views of Aucklanders, and we've had 8,000 submissions, so we've got a pretty good idea of what a substantial number of Aucklanders think, and that will be, if this resolution is passed, forwarded to central government for their consideration. We've got Kataraina here. Do we need Pania? Pania? I think we'll get you up the front as well. Just before I get you to introduce the item, Councillor Casey, would you like to move the resolution? And happy to second it, Councillor Collins. Yeah.
If anybody's requested to speak, we need to say if we've declined why. And I don't recall hearing you say that at the beginning, because there was a request to speak.
Yes, yeah, I made the point that there had been a request from an organisation to speak on this item under the public items, and it was declined on the basis that there was a consultation process that was available to that group and every other group. Okay, so let's, Kataraina, are you introducing this item?
It's such a short paper, I thought we would just take it as read, Chair.
Sorry, distracted for a moment. Kataraina.
I just, so through the Chair, I just thought it was a very short paper, so I thought we could just take it as read.
Okay, right, we come now to questions, and Councillor Casey. No questions? Any questions around the table? I suspect there may be some comments, but maybe not questions. So, Councillor Watson, you've got a question.
Yeah, just one question with in relation to the number of fireworks-related injury claims. I'm assuming that's for all of New Zealand, not just Auckland.
Tanya.
Through the Chair, yes, that's our understanding.
Can I just, I'll mention it to Pania, but to other governing body members as well. I'm getting feedback from around me that sometimes it's hard to hear people. Can you lean towards the microphone with these microphones, please, or bring the microphone closer to you? And I can keep talking if you need another minute, Pania, to answer that question, or do you want to come back to it?
Sorry, through the Chair. Oh, sorry, could you repeat the question? I just got to...
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to get some comparison with the ACC claims with fireworks in relation to other things, and it says 516 firework claims in 2016, and I'm just wondering, is that across the country as a whole or just Auckland?
Through the Chair, I think that was information provided by Councillor Casey that you're reading.
Across New Zealand, okay. And just another question that you may not be able to answer is just the number of people who are employed in fireworks. I think a total of one of the submitters talked about 1,800 people employed in fireworks. Are we able to verify or otherwise that? Or do we just take that as read?
Yes, we're finding it.
Have you got a page reference for us, Councillor? Just trying to find out. I can't see that figure, but I might.
It came from one of the four industry submitters, if you like. If you can't find it, that's fine. I'll just take it as indicative.
Sorry, Councillor, we don't know.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions, Councillor Darby?
Just thank you for this paper. And Councillor Casey, I want to acknowledge your work on this. So I just have some clarification to in their private use. Can you just define that? Does that mean a company could have a public event? And if so, am I getting a nod on that? Am I? A company or an entity, an individual could have, if they have a public event as opposed to a private event, fireworks will still be heard and animals will be still suffering the same way, etc. So can you just clarify?
Through the chair. Thank you for your question. Yeah, so the intention of the proposal is to ask government to change legislation to prohibit the retail sale of fireworks. So that would still enable private companies to still do professional displays. Thank you.
Just testing that. So there are events where at night you can't see them, but there's thousands of birds that are affected. They're displaced from roosts, you know, in significant ecological areas. Dogs will be going off, horses will be running around fields. So that is likely to continue. It's just the private use of a probably a lower scale and less noise over a wider area that's affected.
Yes, through the chair, if you have a look at the 2018 resolution that this committee made, the resolution is very clear on requesting legislation to ban the sale of fireworks to the general public and to end their private use. So your resolution was never about two professionals to run public displays. Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Linda Cooper.
Sorry, is it still questions?
Questions, yes. Okay. Councillor Chris Fletcher.
Thank you, Katarina, again. I guess my question, I want to put it in question time to you. In the event that this is accepted by the governing body today, what are the options that we can have in the way that we present this to government that might give it more weighting? I was disappointed to hear on the radio this morning the minister responsible saying that there is no intention by the government to change the legislation at this stage. So I know sometimes we refer things to the government and sometimes we go in person, sometimes, you know, we do it by officer, sometimes I just wonder whether you as officers have given consideration, if this is adopted by councillors today, as to how it might be presented to government to ensure that it has the weighting that might be conferred on it.
I suppose there are a few options available in terms of seeing the Minister for the Environment in person. They are responsible for the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act, which regulates this. There is the remit process also through local government. I think that closes on May the 13th, where we might try and do a remit process. I don't know whether you'd want to do that, or I mean, you often do letters as well. I think it's really about just putting the Auckland view in front of ministers in a way that they might listen to. You might have a better idea of that having been a former minister than I do, Councillor.
We're still in question time, but I'd like to foreshadow that I suggest that the mover and the seconder give some consideration as to how the matter might be presented.
I think where we are on this is that we have a resolution from last year and it is putting a request to government. The government has positioned itself some time ago to say it's not considering this legislation. However, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with acting on this resolution to say, at the point of time when you're ready to consider this, this is the view as fed back to us by a very large number of Aucklanders. There is an alternative way that you can get something on the table in Parliament, and that is to work through a members' bill. And this is not an issue that necessarily follows party political lines. And if if anyone around this table, and perhaps Councillor Casey, wanted to interest a specific Member of Parliament to put up a member's bill on this, it's subject to a ballot process, but that would be another way of getting the matter before Parliament and a vote in Parliament. And that's maybe an alternative suggestion, Councillor, that you and I are both familiar with, that we could look at. Okay, have we got any other questions? Otherwise, we'll simply move on to, yes, we have, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Worship. I would just want to know the submissions that we received, were the majority of them individuals or were there a whole lot of pro formas?
Through the chair, no, the majority were from individuals. We're not aware of any pro forma responses received. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, we're now coming to comments, and I recognise first of all Councillor Simpson, followed by Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be voting in support of this because I've always said that I would listen to the views of the people from my ward when voting. 88% of the people who submitted from the Orake ward agreed that we should ban the public sale of fireworks, and 10% disagreed, and I think that's a pretty clear indication. So short and sweet, thank you.
Thank you, short and sweet. Councillor Cooper, and then Councillor Lee.
Thank you. It was just, we've overwhelmingly heard from the public that they want us to take this to the government to request it, so I absolutely support the huge amount of people that have done that. We must send it forward. I just wanted to note though, both in the stakeholder hearings we had where the industry came to talk to us, and in this report on page 146 was, apart from the jobs, the local jobs, what they did say, which I think is not clearly understood, because everybody says they'd love public displays, but they are saying, as the importers of these goods, that if they can't do retail sales, they won't be able to bring them in. And so that is a bit of a worry, because we all say it's great, we can have public displays, but they say it wouldn't happen. And also they said that they often subsidise big public displays by gifting a lot of fireworks. So that would be a shame. I think that's that could be an unintended consequence. But I guess none of us, we can live without fireworks if we really have to. Though I must acknowledge a lot of our community groups, Chinese New Year, Diwali, it's really important. It's a really important part of that. So I guess that's something, if the government goes ahead with this, we have to deal with somehow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mike Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This obviously is a well-intentioned measure, and clearly there is a need to take matters of health and safety around fireworks very seriously. And when I chaired the Public Safety and Nuisance Bylaw hearing committee back in 2013, we went out of our way to restrict and reduce areas from where fireworks could be let off. But clearly there is a need, I think, to, given the public feedback, to do some more regulation in terms of the timing and the days where fireworks can be let off in. However, there are also other things to consider, and I want to take a minority view on this issue and point out that while it's easy to ban things or call for things to be banned, you have to realise that fireworks have been in New Zealand since Governor Hobson got here in 1840. And in European culture, letting off fireworks goes back to the 16th century. In China, of course, where gunpowder was invented, it goes back much further. And the cultural aspect of fireworks was brought home to me when I was in China just about a year ago at a family funeral at a remote part of China. And at the funeral, after the funeral, I was quite surprised at the amount of fireworks, firecrackers that were set off. And the firecrackers were set off to safeguard the spirit of the departed one from malign forces. And it was something that the mourners, in letting off these fireworks, it gave the mourners and everyone there comfort that the soul of the departed one was being protected. And so it's important to think about those aspects. 200 metres as the crow flies from where we meet today is Wiley's General Store. It's been in Hobson Street for over 100 years. It's probably the last remnant of what was the Auckland Chinatown. It's a general store, and I'm sure most of you have been in there, and it sells everything under the sun, especially from China. It's quite exotic and unique, and it evokes a different age and another world. Wiley struggles to compete against the new Chinese specialised supermarkets, who probably can sell material, their goods cheaper than the Wiley family. The Wiley family have made it clear to me on a number of occasions that without the annual sale of fireworks, their whole business, that their family business, which has been a unique part of Auckland for well over 100 years, is likely to go under. And they've always made a plea, please don't ban fireworks or public sale of fireworks, because it would harm our business, harm our family, and I think it's a fair argument. So I want the councillors to realise that there are always, as there is always, another side to this particular question, and I think that we need to also think about minority cultures and also our own culture in terms of fireworks. Yes, this always strive to make them safer. However, banning things outright, I think, is not the answer. And therefore, much as I respect the reasons for this, well-intentioned reasons for this request to the government, I will be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sir John Walker.
Thank you. I'm not a do-gooder. And the fact is that I support fireworks in the past, but at the moment I don't support it because I support the animals that go through this torment every year. Cats, dogs, horses, and if you see them galloping around the paddocks and getting injured, that's one aspect of it. I think we've grown up a little bit. I'd like to think where public forums are probably better than individual ones. And if we're going to do something, we do it good. Go and hire out Eden Park. It's got plenty of space to have fireworks. So from that point of view, I can't support. I mean, I want to ban them because I think they're a nuisance. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir John. Councillor Kathy Casey.
They say that the wheels of government turn slowly. It is about a year today since Whanana, Fessel Collins and I brought a notice of motion seeking such a ban. And I'd like to thank Councillor Linda Cooper for suggesting that it would be more in order to ask the people of Auckland what they think. And that's what we've done for the last year. Now, it's been suggested that 8,000 submissions isn't a lot. In actual fact, there were only 1,865 submissions on the Public Safety and Nuisance Bylaw. So it was 4-1 on fireworks. There were no pro formas. It was genuine. And that's what we said to you a year ago. There is a mood for change. What this submission process has brought that to the fore, that people do want to see the government step in and ban the private use and sale of fireworks. They've told us why. In the main, 68% said it was the harm they cause to animals and to people. If one child gets injured by a firework going astray, it's one accident too many. That's the mood for change. And thank you, Sir John. It's exactly what the people of Auckland have told all the councillors today, which is why I'm hoping for unanimity around the table. The government knows the people of Auckland want change. They received 32,000 signatures in a petition in 2015. They didn't ban them then. Instead, they reduced the hours they could be sold. They reduced the gunpowder. They stopped selling bangers and rockets. And they reduced the time. The time is now to ban them. And, you know, we just had a discussion about how do we do this. I've got an idea. Why don't you send myself and Councillor Whanana Efeso Collins to Wellington to seek face-to-face with the ministers, and if they say no, then we will indeed be canvassing MPs for a private member's bill. And I'm happy to wait another year for it to happen, but guess what? It will happen. Why should it happen? Because as usual, New Zealand is miles behind the rest of the world. Every state in Australia has banned the private sale and use of fireworks because of the harm they do to families, to children and to animals. There's only 2 states, Tasmania and the Northern Territories, that haven't, and they've got such strict rules that you'd hardly be able to use them. Why is New Zealand so permissive? Why is it every time we say we'd like something to change, we're accused of being nanny state? When actually what we want to do is reduce harm. This is a growing city. People are flooding to Auckland. We built 10,000 houses last year. What we need to do is protect our people from harm. We've already done that to the extent of our responsibilities in our parks and beaches. We say no fireworks. We have no authority over private places. That's the government. So we say to the government, we want you to protect people from the harm done on people's private places by fireworks. Who gets the call? The council. We get the calls for private fireworks. We have to attend to them, even though we have no jurisdiction. Who supports us? The emergency services support this. Why? Because of the harm caused to people, because of the harm caused to property, because of the enormous pressure it's placed on them for a ridiculous event that commemorates the blowing up of the English Parliament. What year was that? And can anybody tell me what year it was? I bet you can't. No. 1642. No. No, a long time ago. Nobody knows, because it's just an excuse to enjoy fireworks. So we're not saying that you can't enjoy fireworks. We're saying, please, this is a great way to bring people together, build communities, build a sense of inclusiveness. Not for Guy Fawkes, who was a Catholic who tried to broke the English Parliament in 1605. I Googled it. 1605. Who cares about Guy Fawkes? Nobody. What we want to do is make sure that Matariki, Diwali, the Lantern Festival, New Year's, we have safe fireworks for everybody to enjoy safely and free of charge. Now, we're a council, we can do that. Remember the Santa Parade? Free of charge. People need to be able to go and do this thing. That's what people love, the spectacle of fireworks. Yeah, Eden Park, a great place, John. I completely agree with you. I'm hoping for unanimity around the table. The people of Auckland have spoken. It's time to ban the private use and sale of fireworks. And we'll be going to see the government. Right, Whanana Efeso Collins? Done.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Josephine Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say I speak in support of this, I'm really sick of driving around my community and getting fireworks shot at my car. So, yeah, well, my face isn't on it right now, so hopefully I won't get any fireworks shot at me. But, yeah, you know, people are just irresponsible of how they use fireworks, so I do support this. I promote Matariki Light Trail in Glen Innes for people that want to come to a public fireworks display. Please come there, or Waikaraka Park Family Speedway. I want to pick up on the comments made by Councillor Lee in regards to recognising our culture, and I would reiterate the call to recognise 5 November as Parihaka Day. So, you know, recognising our Māori focus. But I am mindful of the church groups in my community that sell fireworks and fundraise, and I would just hope that we're able to provide information to those groups that do fundraise using fireworks for some alternative options for fundraising. So yeah, chocolate or donuts or fruit. And I want to acknowledge Councillor Casey and Councillor Collins for bringing this to the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. I actually lived in Singapore between 91 and 93, and Singapore is one of the countries that has banned fireworks. And I'm just reading here, lighting firecrackers may be an auspicious activity for some cultures, but the loud crackling act has been banned in Singapore since 1970, when the firecrackers caused a fire that killed and injured many thousands of people. Today, Singaporeans are only able to settle firecrackers during festive season. Now, so one other thing is, I was involved with the Howick Lions when they had they put on a public display, and about 7 years ago, I think it was, and it was the most scariest thing that ever happened. They actually had a fireworks that was a rogue fireworks, and it was like you would have thought you were in the middle of a war battle. It was just the most frightening thing that I'd ever been experienced ever in my life. And in fact, we were actually raising money for the eye clinic, and there was a child, I'm pretty sure it was a young child that actually was injured in that, and it was just above the eye, of all places and of all events. So even under conditions where you've actually got pyrotechnics that are actually looking after the fireworks, I think, you know, there's some real cause to be alarmed for the private use of fireworks, because the fireworks have changed from when a lot of us were really young and we had fireworks. They were quite simple things, and they did have the jumping jacks and things like that. But nowadays, some of the fireworks really can actually go right out of control and cause a lot of problems, and also for the cats and the dogs and the horses. I think, yeah. So I totally agree with what Councillor Walker was saying, and Councillor Bartley. I've too have seen people having fireworks shot at cars and things like that. So we're living in a changing world. The other thing is, fireworks are very, very expensive. We have a lot of people that are struggling at the moment to put food on their table, and some of those people and some of those families are actually some of those areas that spend up really big on buying fireworks. So I think we need to be a little bit responsible, and so I'll certainly be supporting Councillor Casey and Councillor Collins, and I know when they go down to Wellington to represent us, they're going to do a wonderful job, and not just for Auckland, but for New Zealand. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor John Watson.
Thanks, Mr. Beer. If we were banning fireworks, I don't know if we would be allowing Councillor Casey to go down to make the maybe Councillor Collins, but certainly not Councillor Casey. I was just reading through some of the submissions, and I'm not for a minute going to challenge anything people have been saying about safety and protecting people first and foremost, and animals, but it is a little sad too. And I noticed quite a few of the comments that people talked about, if we're talking about culture of the old Kiwi culture, where family were out in the backyard and everything was safe. There's a bit of responsibility, and kids look forward to it. And it was kind of part of our culture. So it is a little sad to see that. And what goes with that, the assumption that that will be taken over by public displays. Well, in my area, that doesn't happen. In fact, we have less public firework displays now than we had before. Even though people enjoy them, they're obviously very expensive to run and you need a degree of expertise. So the notion that they'll somehow be catering for that, I don't know if that's necessarily correct. And nor am I sure about potential loopholes here. One of the worst complaints I had were about people who lived out in the country, out in Dairy Flat, where every year this guy puts on a massive big firework display that creates absolute havoc with horses running wild and hurting themselves and neighbours blocked off, etc. And my understanding of that at the time was that was under the notion of putting on like a public display. So this guy was doing this quite oblivious to what everyone else is wanting and getting away with it. So I don't know if it shuts down that operation. If it did, it would be good. If it doesn't, then one of the worst kind of potential abuses continues. The other one that I did mention in the question, if correct, is that there are quite a lot of people employed in that. If there was any business shutting down that was taking out 1,800 jobs, that would be a bit of a headline. So I'm not sure how transferable the employment is, but there are a few casualties here. But if we're talking of casualties, and we look at injury-related claims, anything is bad. But if there is a disproportionate number of injuries occurring on fireworks night, as has always been the assumption in the past. That's why I asked about that 516 figure across New Zealand or Auckland. I note, the Lime scooters, they were 1,000 ACC claims in October, and until the front brake system started locking and chucking people off and breaking their jaw, no one was going to be moving too quickly against them, even though that was a huge number of claims. So yes, first and foremost, protect human safety, but there is a little bit of nostalgic sadness here that's going, but on balance, the people have spoken, and I support that sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Greg Sayers.
Thank you very much. I did notice that the Rodney ward put in the most submissions. Was there a breakdown of who was for and against of the numbers by?
Yeah, I think we've got it set out. I've read it somewhere. It gives us a breakdown of what the different demographic groups are. It's on page 148. So you can see it was more predominantly female, more predominantly European, but still quite a good age breakdown and a reasonable representation. 8,000 people is a big number.
Your Worship, I was referring to page 149 and the total numbers that are there. For example, Rodney, there were 691 submissions.
Oh, I see.
How many were supportive and how many were non-supportive? That breakdown.
We have to do a specific and separate cut, so we could send you that information after this meeting. Sorry, Councillor Simpson had asked us yesterday, which is why we were able to break down the numbers for Rake for her.
Send that, that'd be great.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a really important moment, I think, for this council in terms of expressing the views of Aucklanders. And I've got to say that I have come to this very reluctantly because I was part of a very large extended family, the Lees and Papakura, where I had 36 first cousins, and we got together every Guy Fawkes, and it was very much part of the tradition of our family. And we loved that sense of fun and togetherness. Now, over the years, and you will remember this, Your Worship, I recall when Brian Neeson bought the private members bill, I think at the time, which was to ban skyrockets. I was really challenged by that at the time. I was lucky that my late father, Ted Lees, some of his best friends was Tom Archie and Peter Chan, who set up the Taiping Trading Company, and we had a lot of really dear friends in the Chinese community who I talked to when the the private members bill came up with Brian Neeson. And at that stage, I think I looked at it more in terms of being respectful of other traditions and cultures, and also freedoms. You know, who was going to tell me what I could or couldn't do with regards the space in my own backyard? But the fact is, the world has really changed. As intensification has taken place, it has become more difficult. But I think what is even more difficult, this at that time might have been limited to maybe 1 or 2 events a year. So for those of us who had animals and horses and so forth, we would lock those animals up, we would keep them safe, because we knew on 2 nights or 3 nights a year there were going to be New Year's Eve and Diwali and so forth. You knew that there might have been problems. But now it's just every single night of the week. We can be asleep in the middle of our houses and at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, there'll be a loud bang. And in my case, I've got this very aged old border collie who is totally petrified by the sound of any fireworks. So much so, I keep a regular builder locally in pretty well full employment, because every time the fireworks go off, the dog claws the door so badly we have to have a new door, or it has to have a new paint job. Now, in voting for this today, I know that I'm going to alienate my children and my grandchildren. They will see this as a huge bit of nanny state and incursion into the activities that they consider really important and fun. But at some point, we have to exercise our judgment as to what is right for our community and what is wrong, and what the benefits and the disbenefits are. The reality is that the privilege of having fireworks has been abused by too many. We are seeing them going off at all the wrong times, all hours of the day and night. And also, if you look outside at the moment with the tinder dry situation we have, and the responsibility to our farming and our parklands, and you know, at an ecological level, as well as just a welfare issue around our animals, I think common sense has to prevail. I do feel concerned. I've seen many well-intentioned effort put before government in the past that just falls on deaf ears. So I would like to see us see, which is that we delegate the responsibility to Councillor Casey and to Councillor Collins to take this matter to senior cabinet, to the Prime Minister and cabinet ministers for their consideration. So I wonder whether the mover and the seconder would entertain that. I certainly would like to see very specific action being given as to how this would be promoted. But I'd like to commend them for bringing the matter to us, for the sensible way in that we've had the discussion around this, and to acknowledge, as Councillor Lee has, that there have been people, the Wali, the trading company, and all of those. This will be difficult for them, and I hope that they can recognise that the council will do that, mindful of the contribution that they've made to the community, but also mindful of the safety going forward. So, Mr. Chairman, I wonder whether I should move it by way of an amendment, or whether the mover and seconder will be happy to incorporate that into the motion.
Okay, well, we're about to hear from the seconder now, so perhaps Councillor Collins, if you'd like to take the call and express a view on that. I think we need to think about, having decided to send this resolution down, if that's what we determine to do, and that's what I think we will determine to do, what are the different options of overcoming what the government has already said is its opposition to amending the legislation. So I think we need a little bit of strategic and tactical thinking about how best to advance the resolution. It may be simply sending our 2 councillors down, but it may be that we want to give a little bit more thought to what are the different channels by which we might influence that outcome. But Councillor Collins, you might like to address that in your comments as well.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to incorporate the discussion. we're kind of playing eye contact here. It feels like when I'm emceeing events, I'm trying to look to my mum, who's giving me direction, but I think we're happy to take that guide on that and maybe some wording for an option C. Sarah, I just wanted to talk about, I'm really happy with where this has landed. I'm happy to hear almost unanimous support, and I'll try and use up my 5 minutes just to give those who aren't supportive yet just to come over the line. But I've taken a number of calls in Manukau, and you'll understand that there are a lot of people in our ward who enjoy fireworks. And so I take your point, Councillor Watson, around that kind of that Kiwi thing of being able to gather together and have fireworks. And Councillor Fletcher, you've made that point as well. When I've listened to them, that's pretty much the basis of what they really enjoy. They enjoy coming together. They keep it as safe as possible. They like the kids to have the sparklers. I've been at barbecues myself where my daughter has held sparklers. You know, sure, I'm right behind her, but that's part of that culture that we've had. But I want to balance that against how people have felt from this consultation and the injuries that are reported. We don't own an animal ourselves. When I was little, we owned a couple of dogs, and we would always bring them in the house and do our best to look out for them. So I really get that point as well. So I just think it's important that the good folk of Manukau understand that we've tried to play a really balancing act on this. When we first mooted this idea, when Dr. Casey and I brought this to the table, one of the paragraphs was about public displays. And I just wanted to remake that point because that, I think, is part of what people are after. They want the ability to gather together. They want the ability to have their family have some fun. And the kids love seeing the lights and the sparkles of the fireworks. And so I think it's really important that at some stage, or as we make this decision, that we give some backhead thought to what public displays will be like, could be. You know, at the moment, a lot of local boards sponsor Halloween events and light parties because there are some people in particular faith communities who don't like the notion of Halloween, and so they put on light parties. That might be an avenue to explore if we're looking at public displays that we want that are going to be safe. I'm really happy to go down to Wellington if that's part of the deal, and I'm really glad that Air New Zealand has announced a drop in their fares, and this might be the time, you know, and this might make Shane Jones smile even, you know, and get him working with Air New Zealand. But I think that could be part of our consideration in going down. Councillor Bartley talked about parihaka, and Councillor Watson, you talked about that Kiwi culture. I think we've got both going on here, where we can begin to allow this Kiwi culture to evolve. I think people like fireworks. They like it in safe environments. Yeah, they want to see people celebrate together, and I'm interested in how we take leadership as Auckland civic leaders to facilitating this evolving culture. What are we celebrating? Diwali is the festival of lights, and it's the light that chases away the darkness. That's what Diwali is all about, and I think that's something that we should be proud of. That is special to us as a super diverse city. So I think there's so much that we can do here. We're always encouraged when we're teaching culture at the university is to hold things with your fingertips, because they change, they mold, they evolve. And I think this is a really good step and part of that evolution. So thank you to those councillors who will be supporting this, all 21 of us today. And I really hope that the community sees this as a move forward, as part of that evolution. So I'm really excited. Dr. Casey, well done. I was reticent at the time when you first spoke to me about putting this motion to the table, because I knew how the folk out in Manukau were going to feel. But I think we've reached a really good compromise, and as long as we can get some public displays, I think this is going to be really cool. This is part of the evolving culture of Auckland. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. If I just to finish with a couple of comments of my own, most of what needs to be said, I think, has been said. I don't take a decision to support this resolution lightly. Like Councillor Watson and Councillor Fletcher, I've got pretty fond memories as a kid growing up. As it happens, Councillor Stewart at Eastern Beach, having a big fireworks evening on Guy Fawkes night with family and friends. And they remain great childhood memories. And I guess if we canvassed all of our kids and grandkids, they might have a different view. But I think what has been really decisive since we last considered this resolution a year ago is that we have gone out and we've asked. And on an issue like this, I kind of was reluctant to be arrogant to impose my views on other people. You know, what gives me or any of the 20 of the rest of you the right to tell Aucklanders whether they should enjoy this occasion or not? But what I think we've found in the process of public submissions is a real shift in public mood. And 8,000 submissions, I think, is a good number of submissions. There is no evidence that this is pro forma and it's simply the result of lobbying. This is 8,000 people expressing their views, and 80% of them are saying public display only, not private display. So I think that actually does give our council the mandate to represent to central government what the view of Aucklanders are. People had the opportunity to make submissions. We asked them to speak on the issue. They did, and their message is pretty clear. And I want to join with Sir John Walker in saying that what I think the predominant factor for me is the impact of private fireworks displays on animals. We can all tell the stories. I've been lobbied by many people, including Sir John horse owners, and I've heard some horrific stories about the panic and the injuries that have been sustained as a result of private displays of fireworks. And I've got this dog. It's a Huntaway Beardy Cross. It's a farm dog. It's not allowed in the house. If you had a farm dog, you'd know why you don't allow farm dogs into the house. But when the fireworks goes off, that dog is through the door, through the window, whatever entry she can find, and cowering under a bed. She is absolutely terrified by it. And the biggest number of the submitters to all of us were people that told stories like that about the impact that we're having on our pets and on our farm animals. And that, to me, I think is the most important of the arguments as to why we should think again about private fireworks displays. I don't think this is an end to fireworks. Actually, fireworks is much more widespread than it used to be. I go to celebrations for Chinese New Year, for Diwali, for Matariki, and of course for the New Year on the 1st of January. And the public displays are more frequent and they're pretty impressive. To Councillor Darby, yes, I'm not ruling out that they might not have an impact too on the concerns that we have, but they're in controlled circumstances and they're not up close and threatening to animals. So I think we have a clear steer from Aucklanders as to what their view is. We have a resolution that says that we should convey that view to parliamentarians and to ministers, and I think we have a form of words up there that have been adopted by the mover and the seconder, and I'm comfortable with that, and we might like to contribute to our two councillors on a range of different ways in which we can bring this issue forward and perhaps get Parliament to consider it, notwithstanding the reluctance of respective governments to be seen as the nanny state or the fun police. But I think the issues go way beyond those two things. And I think that if we did do a survey across New Zealanders, you'd get a very clear message from New Zealanders that they have moved on from the past and they have a new opinion. So I support the resolution. I thank Councillors Casey and Collins for moving them forward. And it's now my intention to put the motion as amended by Clause C. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Against B, and was there another dissenting voice that wanted to be registered? Okay, so I declare that carried with Councillor Lee indicating his opposition to B of the resolution.